are moving on. So the next part under reports is the open letter. Trustee Watson, I believe you asked for this to be added to the agenda. Would you like to ask a question on it?
Sure. I was wondering before I asked the question, can we get some sort of report as to why we or why staff decided to issue the open letter, and as you know, and who is the open letter from? So if we could get some information as to why, and then I have my question.
Okay. Who would like to respond to
that? Through you, Chair. With regards to why we issued the open letter, the issue was referred to staff, and so as per practice, staff was addressing the issues that were in there. A part of the concerns was around transparency with the wider community, and so as a part of that, we made it.
I can't hear.
Is your microphone on?
It's on.
Can you bring it closer?
Yeah, sure.
There you go.
There you go. Can you hear now?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll just start over through you, Chair. The issue was referred to staff, and as per practice, we were addressing the questions that were raised. As a part of the concerns that were raised, the issue of transparency with the community was raised, and so we issued the letter openly to the entire community. With regards to the question who wrote the letter or who is the letter from, so you can imagine in an organization our size, there's a lot that goes into it. So if I can ask for those from whom it's from, if you could just identify yourself, maybe just by standing, so that the trustees could see.
So it's fair to say everyone here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So Trustee Watson, would you like to ask your first question? And then I have Trustee Piatowski, and then Trustee Ramsey and Trustee Meisner. Okay, go ahead.
So the reason that I wanted this on the agenda is because all of my time on the board, I have never seen a parent, any parent responded to in this way. We have referred a number of issues to staff, and usually it's done with email. I was completely shocked. This is the first time I've ever experienced anything like this. I felt that this new, again, I didn't give my permission. I wasn't asked. But if I had been asked, I would have said, I would think that this would be too excessive and would appear heavy-handed for us to use all of our social media to counter legitimate concerns, legitimate parental concerns. I've been on this board for 22 years, and I can say age appropriateness has been the #1 concern of parents when it has anything to do with sexual health, whether it's guidelines, whether it's a survey, whether it's a presentation, whether it's anything having to do with sexual health. That's just the norm. Parents have always been concerned. And when I read the open letter, you know, there were parts in it that I wondered, and I'm not sure who wrote this part, but so I'm going to ask my question about this part. So it says that the section where it mentions about the bluest eye, it says in this report, and I guess I don't know who, it states that the bluest eye is not available in WRDS schools, but then it goes on to say it's available online to our student population, which appears to be a contradiction. I'm assuming it's on Chromebook, which means it's still in our schools, but it's on the Chromebook. And then it goes on to state that although the suggested reading level is grade 4 and 5, the audience for this book is adolescents. It doesn't say what the adolescent age is, but according to the World Health Organization, an adolescent is 10 to 19. So what age and what grade do we as a board, as staff, recommend the bluest eye to children in our board? Because I don't know what your definition of an adolescent is.
You want to take that? Thank you.
Through the chair, just before I pass this to Associate Director. Let's try. Through the chair, just before I pass this to Associate Director Shantz, I just want to clarify, Trustee Watson, in the comments that you were making on age appropriateness and sexual health, that I would agree with you that parents would have concerns around issues of sexual health. The issue of sexual orientation and gender identity is not the same as that. And those are both protected grounds under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Human Rights Code, which we're meant to uphold. So there would be a difference there that we just want to be mindful of. I'd like to just
Director Sean, answer your question.
Through the chair to trustees, when we look at collections in libraries and libraries within school settings or in the public, they are just that, they are collections. And I want us to be very careful not to be focusing in on a specific age. When we walk into our libraries in a K-6 school, we don't have a grade 1 collection, a grade 2 collection, a grade 3 collection. They are collections that students can access as we move forward. Same would apply to our K-8 schools and our secondary schools. The question was raised regarding our online resources. Because of the nature of the online resources, those are available to all of our students. And due to the interest of students and other things along those lines, students are able to access a variety of text within those collections.
So just to follow up, thank you. So just to follow up, first of all, I'm talking about age appropriateness and parents who have come forward talking about age appropriateness. So to be clear, that's what I'm talking about. And so when we look at the open letter, it says it's not intended for grade 4 and 5, but it is for adolescents. And unless we identify that, parents aren't going to understand. My concern is that when parents come forward, can be the most intimidating experience when they walk into this boardroom. They walk up here all alone. I did it as a parent, and I came forward as a parent 22 years ago about age appropriateness. And it had to do with sexual content. That's how I got introduced to school board. Walking up to the podium can be a very intimidating experience. And so when a parent comes forward and they bring their concern, I could not imagine that I would be addressed. I mean, it would be overwhelming to be addressed by all of these staff members. We have had multiple discussions at this board table over the years about what do parents feel when they stand here and they address this board and they see a line of suits. All of these people have so much more than them just walking up with their opinions and their concerns. And so I want to make it very clear that I did not support that open letter. I will never support the open letter process. I hope it never happens again. I think it was excessive, and I feel very badly for parents who venture out, who have to work come here at night, sit through a meeting, and it's already intimidating. And so my question was, if we're not going to identify what an adolescent is, and if we're not going with the World Health Order, you know, how are parents supposed to know what's age appropriate or not? So I guess my question is, what is an adolescent? Well, as a board, I mean, if we're going to write an open letter, what is the age appropriateness? We're recommending these resources. We have them on our Chromebooks. What age of the child are we gearing this to?
Okay. Associate Director Shantz?
Through the chair to trustees, if the question is focusing on what is an adolescent, then we would suggest that in the range of age 13 to 14 and up.
Okay.
And I would remind trustees that that would include students in our elementary panel.
Okay, thank you, Associate Director Shantz. Trustee Paitowski?
Thank you. Through you, I will note that I voted against the motion to refer this issue to staff. I thought that some of the delegates' remarks were unfair, inaccurate, even offensive, referring specifically to facilitating child abuse, which is tremendously unfair to our entire board, to our staff. Having said that, I of course understand the obligation of all trustees to uphold decisions of the board, and the majority of trustees voted to refer this to staff. I think it was entirely appropriate for the letter that was written in response to the delegates' concerns to be released. This is an issue that was covered by Fox News, local Canadian online media as well, and you know, it was being widely discussed. I think it is appropriate for our response to be out there in the public domain as well. There was nothing in the letter that I found inaccurate. I thought it was extremely helpful in terms of clarifying the issues raised by the delegate.
Thank you, Trustee Paitowski. Trustee Ramsey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Without repeating what my colleague Trustee Watson pointed out, I'll start off by saying I fully support her remarks, and I'll add to that by voicing my concern about the lack of respect for the role of parents in the lives of their children. And then saying that, I guess my question is, because I have this huge concern that we now have a governance issue at this board, in the sense that the Board of Trustees on the 16th of January at our meeting, as Trustee Watson pointed out, the delegation came in, they made their delegation. There was a vote to refer the matter to staff. And prior to that decision of the board on the 16th of January being ratified, this was a committee of the whole meeting. Someone, and I'm hearing that our sole employee pointed out, and there's a whole bunch of staff here that stood up and said that, confirmed that they're part of the development of this open letter. But I'm speaking now to, and the question I guess to our sole employee, Director of Education, as to where the authority was derived from to post this open letter to this, the letter being prior to a report coming back to the board. So basically there's action taken without board approval, and I'd like to know with regard to the governance issues that it raises, where the authority was derived from, notwithstanding who agrees with the contents of the letter, which I vehemently disagree with how this parent was attacked in everything but name. But I think it's very clear as to who it was directed at. So that said, I would like an answer who signed off. I'm not satisfied with some of the communications that has took place over the weekend where it was being pointed out that certain board members were consulted and they signed off. But the fact is we never had an opportunity to weigh in, and the news might as well not come at the end of the month because the decision was never ratified. So I'd just like an explanation, please.
Jonathan?
Yeah, sure. Through Chair, the matter was referred to staff to deal with. There was no request for a report to follow. Typically, just as in past practice, when matters are referred to staff, it is up to staff to actually deal with the issue. And that's exactly what we did. We addressed the issue. I don't know, Executive Officer Dugan McKenzie, if you had anything you wanted to add there.
I actually was going to ask Manager Rydell if she could clarify the rules and past practice.
Sure.
Through the chair. As mentioned previously, the Board of Trustees did approve referring the delegation. Their concerns to staff to provide the delegation with information, and that was the language used at the time. There was no request to report back to the board table. And it is a typical process for staff to follow up directly with that delegation without reporting back to trustees on the content of that. And I will add that we often, when delegations are referred to staff to follow up with, in the essence of getting timely communication to those individuals, those items are not always waited for ratification because those parents could be waiting up to 3 or 4 weeks to receive that information. So it has been past practice that we've done that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Follow up, Trustee Ramsey?
yes, Madam Chair. I'm not satisfied with the, I would classify it as a weak justification of something that already took place. But that said, I am still, I guess my follow-up question, seeing something one follow-up, is that if someone could elaborate then on what seeing that students can access the book that was the subject of the delegation. I wonder if someone could just educate me a little bit further as to what the learning objectives for the grade that the parent identified, what the learning objectives are, and if it includes access. And by the way, I just want to point out, it's nothing to do with the author, who's a very respected author. It's about, as Trustee Watson pointed out, age appropriateness. And the book is very graphic, and so the learning objectives. Could someone comment on that, please? For the grade that the parent pointed, I believe it was grade 4. Grade 4.
Thank you. Associate Director Shantz?
Through the chair to trustees, a reminder to trustees that libraries serve a couple functions within our school system. One of those are curricular resources that teachers may utilize or educators may utilize in the direct instruction of students. There's also other materials that are utilized for interest reading and other access points for students as well. So I believe it's important for us to realize that not every document in there will be used in direct instruction or be directly linked to curriculum expectations as we move forward.
Thank you. Trustee Meisner?
I'm hearing a number of things being argued here about particulars of what we'd heard from the delegate. We sat patiently, we listened to the delegate and what he had to say. We passed a motion, which I did vote against, to forward to staff and then allow them to have an opportunity to answer that. And in my idea, what I saw as the open letter, I want to thank staff for creating that and posting that open letter. Because in the interest of transparency, what you did was make your responses available to everyone served by this board. And in my experience, the response to this open letter that I've seen and heard has been overwhelmingly positive. Yes, there are people who are going to have, but they're going to have some naysayers. The letter clearly and concisely addresses each concern that the delegate raised, as well as outlining the mandates, the policies, the code of conduct that the board has diligently followed. But it also makes clear that families, parents, caregivers who feel that they don't want to participate in the survey have the right to opt out of it. I think the staff did a wonderful job, and I thank you for it.
Thank you, trustee Meisner. Trustee Cody?
I agree with my fellow trustees Ramsey and Watson. I don't agree with the way the letter was handled. I felt it was very heavy-handed. As this letter reflects not only the board, but everybody in the staff and trustees. And I just don't agree with it. It takes a lot. I'm nervous here myself, being a first-time trustee. I can only imagine how a parent feels about how the reading material his children are reading off tablets or at the library. For us to dismiss, he's not a professional. I'm not a professional. I have to understand where this person's coming from, and I can relate to where this person's coming from. I think as professionals in this room, we should have been maybe not with kid gloves, but be more patient in our approach. I felt that was very, very heavy-handed. I had several phone calls over the weekend, and people were just saying, like, what? You know, I couldn't give them an explanation. I had no idea this letter was coming out. I was caught totally off guard. I had to read the thing like 3 or 4 times, and people are still phoning me, and I have no answer. I have no explanation. I don't know who or where all this all came from one person trying to set maybe you guys' emotions up. I don't know. I'm not that person, but I know how I feel right now. It's a very nerve-wracking experience, and I can appreciate that. And I think we should maybe, kick it back a notch. Refrain from being so heavy-handed and boom, 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 and this is the way it is. I'm sorry, but that's.
Thank you. Trustee Johnson.
Oh, thank you very much. I would just like to say I too did not initially support the letter going to staff. I felt that the presentation was full of some deeply, deeply troubling inaccuracies and false accusations. And I sat patiently and bit my lip and let that person say what they had to say. But I was disgusted, because if you care about sexual issues, how dare you read that passage publicly in a meeting that's being recorded? I was appalled to the core of my being. I want to thank the staff who stood up today in this meeting to take responsibility for that letter and for shouldering this, because I'm deeply proud of you right now, and I want you to know that.
I certainly not.
I am
Trustee
talking
Ramsey?
now.
Trustee Ramsey, you're out of order.
I am talking, and I don't
Trustee
speak very
Johnson?
often. I would like to quote the final line of that. And I did not want the letter to go to staff, because I did not want the staff to have the burden of feeling like we all took these accusations seriously, because they were quite disturbing. And I did not want that weight put on the staff. As it turned out, the staff turned it around. And I'm very proud to see that it was made public, considering how much traction this issue has had in the press. And I just want to finish off with one of the statements in that letter that I thought was beautiful. Any child in WRDSB belongs here. We believe in the human rights of all students, staff, and families that we serve. Thank you, staff.
Thank you, Trustee Johnson. Trustee Woodcock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't have a problem with the method of the response, and I've been a trustee for about 19 years, and yes, it's not. It's different to have an open letter go out to the public. The delegation appeared in public. The information was referred to staff. Staff using I like the way that they addressed the issue through for transparency reasons, and I want to thank staff for doing it that way, because it did clarify some of what I interpret to be misconceptions and misinformation that was in the delegate's presentation. That's my opinion. We all have respectful. We can have this discussion in a respectful manner, and we are going to disagree. I thank the staff for the response. I have heard positive input from around the province from other trustees and other boards who are watching this, this unfold. And they have indicated that they appreciate the fact in the letter. And, it hasn't all been, I just think that, my opinion is that the letter hit the mark and it was a good response. Staff were given the, task of responding. They've always responded this way to previous things when we've asked them to respond to a delegate's question. They go ahead and do it. Times are changing. I'm an old trustee. Okay, let me say experienced trustee, and things have to change because the world is changing around us, and we can't just keep doing things the same way that we've always done. It's important that this board be transparent in how they're following policy, why we're following policy, and I support the concept of the open letter.
Thank you. Okay, next on my speaking list, I have trustee Radlin, then student trustee Reina, and trustee Wasim, and then I'll go to second speakers. Trustee Radlin?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm wondering if the director could share with us what the concerns were and why it was decided to make the statement in this way.
Director Shonika?
Through you, Chair. I do appreciate that people are concerned about the parent who delegated. I would always want all parents to feel that they're able to come forward and share concerns. But there has to be a line, and that line has to be around the human rights of all of the students that we serve. We had a delegation where not only was it concerns that were raised, staff were being accused of child abuse. The implications of it was actually quite heinous and problematic, significantly problematic. And I would hope that this board, and I'm speaking as the CEO right now, would be concerned about all the leaders around this table who have worked tirelessly to make sure that students and families are well served. And we are governed by a college that is legislated and CARE is legislated. And to have someone in the boardroom accuse us of child abuse and to imply that we're trying to hide things from parents, which has been a carefully cloaked and veiled sentiment that has been happening over the last year, that is targeting to us LGBT identifying students under the guise of age appropriateness, but singling them out where we know that it's impacting their health, impacting their well-being. And so while I am concerned and I want to make sure that we continue to have conversations, it cannot be at the cost of children, and it cannot be at the cost of families who also deserve to be here. And the language that's being used is inflammatory. It is being propagated on social media. We've had community leaders who support 2S LGBT identifying children across this region come to us and say that children are feeling unsafe, that they are becoming suicidal, that they don't feel that they can stay here. I would also hope that that is a concern for every one of us in this room. You know, it's been interesting watching how this has been unfolding. So I'm just going to point to a couple of things again in my role so that the entire board is aware. So this, I'm going to say this from the US because it seems like a lot of things from the US are here right now. Center for Disease Control, speaking about 2S LGBT identifying young people, said that in order for them to thrive, they need to feel socially, emotionally, and physically safe and supported. And they are at greater risk for depression, suicide, than heterosexual youth. In a report by EGAL Canada, they talk about why It has to do with internalized stigma, concealment of identity, fear of rejection, enacted violence. For trans children, there's an increase in violence. To us LGBT identifying people are 5 to 10 times more likely to attempt suicide than cisgender and heterosexual individuals. Trans youth found this when they did a survey of trans youth, 36% of them aged 14 to 18 and 11% of those aged 19 to 25 had attempted suicide in the past year. I cannot sit here, nor can any of the leaders in this room, and not understand that we have to make sure that any conversation that we have must be inclusive of 2S LGBT identifying children. We have had numerous messages over the weekend and letters, including from teachers and parents, thanking us for the stance to let them know that they belong here and that their children are safe. So having a conversation for us on age appropriateness is one thing. To have that at the expense and the cost of 2S LGBT children, again, as the CEO, I would advise that we have a duty to uphold the Human Rights Code. When our actions are counter to that, we open ourselves up to liability and to risk, and more importantly, to the loss of children who have forever been marginalized in the school system. We as leaders, making sure that we uphold the code, ministry direction, and the policies of this board, made a decision to make sure that while we will answer the questions, even though they were inflammatory, unfair, and problematic, that at the same time we would do so in a way that would allow children and families to know that if they are here in WRDSB, they belong here. We believe that. We believe in all of them, and we want them to be successful and to be able to be the best that they can be.
Thank you, Director Chanaka. Follow-up, Trustee Radlin?
Yes, just to say that, thank you for that response. And it indicates that this was a thoughtful response. It was not something done without thought and reflection, and above all, concern for the students whom we serve. I'd also like to say I fully commend the nature of your response, because it is important that, as the director just pointed out, that our community fully understands our requirements under the Human Rights Code and under ministry legislation. This is not an option or something that you do if you like it or don't like it. I would also like to point out that although the questions and the delegation was inflammatory, the answers were not. The answers addressed each concern individually and answered the question as it was asked. I think it is important that the public be informed, and I think the appreciation shown by many indicates that this was the correct response. Thank you to staff and to the director.
Thank you, Trustee Radlin. Student Trustee Reyna.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for you to the trustees. When I read this letter multiple times, I found it to be rather an explanation, and rather than an attack or disvaluing, as some trustees have thought of it as. And I think it was an appropriate action. I understand why some are calling it a little headstrong, but I think when dealing with such big accusations that are not true in whatsoever, I think it is very important to address them in this way. As well, there may be more parents out there that are misinformed, do not know, and I think having a public response that can be easily referred to is very important, so that they can understand that the survey, you can opt out of it or anything like that. And there are more options than just, students taking that route. So I think it was very important and very good that it was public. And yeah, it's not a justification, but rather I'd say further information by the board. And yeah, I completely second what Trustee Radeland said, that human rights is not a choice. And as a board, we say that we will, you know, we want quality education for our students. Well, I think this is the way we get it, by making sure everyone feels welcome. And without that, how can we even think to have a functioning school system? So yeah, I really do commend the open letter. So thank you.
Thank you, student trustee Reina. Trustee Racine?
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair. Something interesting is after that board meeting where the delegates shared their concerns, I voted in favor of referring the concerns to staff so that staff could address them as the delegate had asked for. There were multiple articles that went up and were highlighting this delegate's concerns. And at that point, it was a very public conversation. And I really want to emphasize that point about it being public. It was beyond just us. It was being covered by multiple news outlets across the province of Ontario. People everywhere across this province, whoever was reading those articles, was hearing about the concerns of this delegate. And that's why I think it's very fair that we have a public response to clarify our responsibilities, our duties to uphold as a board in this public manner. I do not think it's appropriate for us to be going back and forth about whether this is okay to respond to publicly or not, given that the matter had become public. We handle a lot of concerns that are brought forward to the board, whether it's about new schools, whether it's about zoning, whether it's about traffic safety. We put them up on our social medias. There's not always a singular point person, but when we hear concerns from the community, we respond to those concerns using our social media outlets, using our website, because unlike the people sitting in this room, not everyone is going to be here for 5 hours or 4 hours sitting through a meeting. Not everyone's going to do that. Most people need a quick 5-minute Google search or less. The average attention span of a teenager these days is like 7 to 14 seconds tops. So if you think anyone is going to be watching the entirety of this meeting to see what went down, they're not. They're going to be taking people's words for what they said or what went down through articles, whatever they see on social media, whatever is quoted on Twitter, whatever they see on Instagram. I don't want students, I don't want staff, and I don't want families and guardians of this board to be concerned about their education. I don't want them to be concerned about our school's commitment to the success of our students. That is why I think it's important and appropriate that we addressed the many concerns, the very public concerns brought forward to us in this public way through this open letter. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Wassine. Okay, I think everybody has spoken for the first time that wanted to. Oh, sorry, Student Trustee Soar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I would like to stress that because the delegate's concerns were expressed publicly, it is vital that the board responds just as publicly. We have already seen the harm that occurs to members of the WRDSB community back in January of last year when the board does not transparently express its stance in fear of perpetrating more harm. Once again, a lack of transparency creates a void that is quickly filled up with much more harmful narratives. As a representative of the WRDSB student body, I commend the board for being open and transparent, and in fact wish that we had used this approach in the past. I hope that we can move forward with a similar mindset. Thank you.
Thank you, Student Trustee Soar. Okay, Trustee Watson for the second time.
Thank you. So I'd like to start by saying, and I think we'd all agree on this, that all students belong and all students are valued. The concern is that parents are, especially with sexual health topics, whether it's a presentation, whether it's a survey, whether it's the curriculum guidelines, regardless, it's very highly charged. So for example, right now we have a presentation going on in our schools. It's called Real Time. I don't know anything about it, but I know I've been receiving calls from parents because permission slips aren't going out. That's a concern. And yet I've emailed and I'm not getting the response that I'm not hearing anything. I'm not hearing any information. So I'll have to do another follow-up. But the concern is that when the delegate came forward, one of the issues was this particular book and its age appropriateness. Now, what staff are saying, they're saying the book is geared to 13 to 14. Well, then that appears to be a legitimate concern that was brought forward. And yet we hear, you know, I'm not seeing that in the response because there was some miscommunication. The parent was under the impression it was for grade 4 and 5. So when we talk about transparency, that is a good thing. But when we gave the motion, it said that what we need to do is give this to staff first before bringing a motion, give this to staff, and staff can deal with the parent. The staff can deal with issues. With the parent, if you read the motion over again, it's with the parent. It's not with Waterloo Region. So when we start veering and we decide we're going to do something brand new, we're going to use all our power, all our social media power, and we're going to respond to the entire region. That needs to be a decision made at this board table. It wasn't. We said the parent. The motion says the parent. It doesn't say the region. It doesn't say use all your social media to respond to this parent and the region. So that is a huge concern. And when Trustee Johnson was offended by the wording that the parent had the audacity to read, imagine how that parent felt when the parent isn't, any parent, when they're talking about age appropriateness, they're not even connected to the system. They're reading this in their own home. Imagine what they felt. And as Trustee Cody talked about, put yourself in the parent. I know that this is your job and you live and breathe, but put yourself in the parent's shoes and their child and their experience and what their age appropriate level is for their child, because they know their child the best. So I have another question about according to the open letter. It states that these arguments are veiled attempts to target 2S LGBTQIA children and families. And I wonder if we have any factual evidence to substantiate that, because we're making that statement and yet I don't see any facts. Like when are you saying that? And because I'm not sure what it's referring to or who, but I'd like to know. So any parent who comes to this podium about age appropriate concerns, are we going to say this about them? Like who is referencing, like who are we referencing when we make a statement like this?
Okay, so staff, and I'd like to thank you for sending the email about referring it to staff so they could follow up with the school, which they have done, I believe. Executive Officer Dugan McKenzie.
I think I'd like to go back to last Monday and remind, through you, Madam Chair, and remind trustees that in the delegation where the delegates started was in conversations around surveys, asking questions around gender identity. And so when we talk about veiled arguments that are really an attack against the 2S LGBTQIA community, Trustee Watson, that's what we're referring to, that people use certain coded language to attack trans community and make their lives a little bit more unsafe. So that's what that was in reference to. You've a few times talked about the parents' misunderstanding of what is readability level, grade 4, grade 5 readability versus the audience. And I don't know if Associate Director Shantz wants to speak to that again.
Associate Director Shantz?
Through the chair to trustees, I think some further information I'd like to share with trustees. Some will be aware, but others may not, that we do have a very transparent process for the selection and deselection of text in our libraries. That information is on our website. It's accessible to all families. There is a process by which families can access to raise concerns regarding text. And I can share with trustees that that process is very seldom accessed. We have hundreds of thousands of texts in our collections, and very, very seldom is that process accessed. I can share with trustees that in almost every time that that process is accessed, it is raising concerns over texts that have been added to the collection to support our 2S LGBTQ community. There is a consistent trend in that, how that process is accessed. And as the director has spoken, that is a concern for the educators in this room and the leaders in this room.
So
Thank
just
you.
to follow
Quick
up.
follow-up?
Yes, I just want to be clear. So when we have parents who come forward and talk about age appropriateness, and it's over a number of topics, because I've heard from multiple parents where they have said, we're not against anyone. We just believe that it's just not age appropriate for their child. We have a religious accommodation review policy for something similar. So if parents are saying, you know what, they want to opt out, just like on the surveys, you're opting out. I did not hear anyone state that they were against any group. In fact, when the question was asked tonight, we were told that this book is geared towards 13 and 14-year-olds. And I think that what we're doing is we're agreeing with the delegate that it's not appropriate for grade 4 and 5. So I just want to be careful of us judging anyone in particular. We don't know. We can't judge people's hearts. We can't judge people's motives. When people come forward and parents come forward, I was one of them about age appropriateness. We have to take them for their word. We have to believe what they're saying. We cannot jump to conclusions that, oh, well, you're against this person, you're against this. Very clearly, I have not heard anybody say I'm against these groups. I have not heard it.
Okay, we'll let staff respond. You were going to ask a question. Go ahead, Associate Director Shantz.
Through the chair to trustees, I think some additional information may be important to this conversation. For anyone who has read that text, they will know that it is an incredibly complex read. The author uses a very complex style of metaphor and would not be typically something that an elementary student or a young elementary student would engage in. I can also share with trustees that some evidence has come forward since the delegation that has raised the question of who actually signed out that text. And that is something that we are currently investigating. I don't know the outcome of that investigation at this point, but it is something that we are looking into. And the question has been raised, or the evidence has been brought forward that it may not have been the student that signed out that text.
Thank you, Associate Director Shantz. Trustee Ramsey for the second time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think most of the points has been covered. I just want to once again just register my displeasure with the way the staff approached this. A parent, I spoke with a parent over the weekend, and I agree with their description of what the board did. They said that this is a strawman fallacy. The real subject of the concerns that were shared by the parent was not addressed, but instead replaced with a false one. And that is what the board, that's what I'm hearing from staff, that's what they're responding to. They've created the situation as if the parent was here asking for us to not acknowledge our LGBTQ friends and families and neighbors. And that's not the case. We heard what the parent was here about, and still his concerns have not been addressed. All we're going to do as a board of trustees is to be the board's representative to the public, that we might as well resign and allow things, or ask the minister to run things out of Queen's Park. That's all, that's the only function that we can have here. I mean, if we want to talk about the issues that staff have created to justify weaponizing their empathy towards this
Trustee Ramsey, will you withdraw that?
Trustee Ramsey withdraw that kind of language when he's talking about the work that staff is doing.
Trustee Ramsey?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I will withdraw it because I believe that is.
You are-
Okay, I'm going to withdraw that, but I truly believe that. Okay, and the entire infrastructure of the board was brought to bear on this parent. It is unfair. I totally agree with Trustee Watson. It is unfair. The entire, I assume by the number of people that stood up here and staff, that means the entire communications apparatus that taxpayers paid for was utilized against him. And all he was asking about was whether or not this book was appropriate for a grade 4 child. And all of a sudden now we're having a conversation and looking to cause more panic amongst many of our vulnerable populations by trying to suggest that this citizen.
Yeah, there's a point of order.
Ramsey is again casting aspersions on staff.
Trustee Ramsey, you're going to wrap up your comments. I'm going to move on unless you are going to withdraw your disparaging comments.
I won't be withdrawing. I don't think it's disparaging. I won't withdraw it, so I'll stop there.
Thank you. Trustee Radlin, did you? You had
Yeah,
your
to
hand raised.
trustee.
Thank you.
First of all, the response answered questions that were asked. In terms of the bluest eye, what I read was that it was not available in elementary schools. It was only available in secondary school libraries, and it was available online. So I think that answers the question as to whether a grade 4 or 5 student could access the book in the school library. I would also like to say that it was the delegate who used the phrase child abuse, which makes their stance clear. Language such as that does not indicate an openness to all identities. We have been talking about parents, and I would like to say some parents. There are many parents who have supported this response. There are many parents who support the legislation and the actions of the board. There are many parents who support the staff, their hard work, and their attempt to make everyone feel validated and accepted. And while it is true that there will always be some people that disagree, it is disrespectful to suggest that because someone does not agree with you and someone argues to the contrary, that they're in some way weaponizing anything.
Trustee Wasim?
I would like to just make a motion for a quick 5-minute break.
Okay, give a second for,
Can we combine that with a motion to extend? As we're at
Well,
9:19.
we'll do that when we come back.
Okay.
Instead. Is there a second to, or is a motion to recess? Is there a second for that? Oh, Trustee Radlin, are you most seconding the motion for a 5-minute recess?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? And opposed? And abstained. Okay, and that's carried. So we'll take a 5-minute recess and we will reconvene at. Okay, we'll get started again. I have Trustee Woodcock for the second time.
Shouldn't have taken that. That's why I voted against the break. Actually, I would like to call a question, but there is no question to call. So
I'm almost through this speakers list for the second time.
Okay, I'll pass then.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Wasim, did you have more to add or was it just the motion? Okay, thank you. Trustee Palatowski for the second time.
I'd like to move a motion to extend until 10 o'clock.
Okay, second. Trustee Meisner, all in favor of extending until 10 o'clock? Thank you. That's unanimous.
And
Okay.
I do have a further comment.
Go ahead.
So quite properly, there are laws, policies, bylaws, procedures preventing child abuse. And accusations of child abuse are serious. False accusations of child abuse can be career limiting for those who work with children. We need to take them very seriously. And it's very appropriate for the board to react strongly when a false allegation of child abuse is dropped in one of our meetings. And I want to again commend everyone involved in writing and posting that letter for reacting in the way that they did to this comment.
Thank you. And I'm through the speakers list, and I would just like to add my thanks to staff for your letter. It was well written. It cleared up a lot of misconceptions and misinformation. It responded to the accusation of child abuse, which was unfounded, and it was transparent to the community. And I hope that this letter lets the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, students, staff, and families know that we will continue to provide a safe, inclusive working environment, learning and working environment in our schools. So thank you for that letter. Okay. We are moving on through our agenda to board reports, and the next one is a motion for staff well-being. And this was a notice motion that I presented, so I am going to step down from the chair and ask Vice Chair Woodcock to chair this agenda item, and then I'll come back at the end. Uh-oh. You need it? Do you need your computer? I guess I. Oh, okay. Oh, it's been a while. I don't know. On is up. All right. So, we have a, what's your name? Trustee Weston. Would you like to bring forward and speak to the recommendation on folio, whatever it is? 29, please.
Thank you.
Little humor is not going to hurt any of us at this juncture. That's right. Thank you, Vice Chair Woodcock. I brought this motion forward because I would like to know what how staff well-being, one of our strategic directions, is being supported across the system. I'm hearing from staff that we, like other employers, could do better at supporting staff well-being at a time when many people are stressed. I hope that by requesting a report that highlights what we are doing and what we would need to do to create a staff well-being strategy, we can move forward for more support for staff. This would help fulfill one of our strategic directions, and in turn, I believe, also support student achievement and well-being. I would just like to hope that my colleagues will support the motion, and I would be happy to move it. All right, thank you. Thank you, Trustee Weston. Could I have a seconder? Trustee Johnson? Okay, discussion on the matter, and I'll come back to you, Trustee Weston, at the end of the discussion. Who would like to speak to this motion? Trustee Johnson, then Piatowski, then Wasim. Yeah, did you have your hand up? No, okay.
I think so.
Just hands flying around.
Just a floppy wrist.
Go ahead, Trustee Johnson.
Thank you very much to the chair. just wanted to have a couple of points of clarification. Shall I do one at a time and let the other one speak, or shall I do them both at once?
Why don't you ask one at a time and we'll get clarification and then we'll go from there.
Thanks. I wanted to clarify. I do believe this had been brought forward earlier this year, sort of before the election, by other previous trustees that are no longer on the board. Should we take a moment and acknowledge that? Am I correct in that?
So
Trustee West just indicated by trustee.
I can clarify that.
Okay.
Yeah, in the status, it talks about on the report, it says that it was served September 19th and brought forward by trustee Weston and supported by then trustee Herring at the top.
Thank you.
Your next question of clarification?
Yeah, it's a little bit longer.
Sure.
Okay, so I just wanted to review what I see here. So it looks like we're going to look at finding out the supports that exist, and then we're also going to be looking at new staff supports that are needed. And I'm kind of looking forward to this report because I'm hearing from teachers right now who are really feeling with report card season. I'm pleased also that it's going to look beyond the classroom and the workplace, because we know so much that impacts what happens the classroom. I should say the classroom and the workplace, because we know so much of what happens in our workday can be impacted from outside where we're working. I'm also assuming that at some point there will be input from staff. We have a very large staff with a lot of different working conditions and experiences. And so regarding the new supports that may be needed, I don't know if this is, say, an amendment or just something that can be put in the notes. I'm hoping that all staff will be able to have direct input on where they're at and what's needed. I know it can be more efficient to funnel things through admin or unions or federations, but because of the extraordinary circumstances of the times we are in, I'm hoping that every staff member across the board will get an individual opportunity to say or suggest what they need and how they're doing. I know if staff aren't doing well, our students aren't doing well either, and all the way through the system. So I'm hoping that the staff will feel take the time needed to do this thoroughly. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Johnson. I'm going to turn to Director Chanika and just ask that staff take note of that wish, that it not just be any feedback we elicit is going to be from frontline staff. I'm seeing nods. Is that okay? Are you okay with that, trustee Johnson?
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Piakowski.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I want to commend trustee Weston, of course now Chair Weston, for bringing this motion forward and for patience and waiting for it to come to the table. I particularly want to commend the inclusion of the third bullet that staff be supported when they are being harassed on social media or in other circumstances. And I just think that we've mentioned the changing environment in education, and I think that we just need to reflect that that our staff, our teachers, our other education workers are being scrutinized, criticized, even attacked in ways that that haven't always been the case, and we need to find a way to support them through that. So I will be voting for the motion.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers to the motion? Trustee Watson?
Thank you. So I don't have a problem with this motion at all. You know, I think when we look at mental health, we obviously have to include students, and we have to include parents, and we have to include everyone. I'd love for everyone to have an opportunity to talk about their own mental health. The comment was just made about staff, certain staff being attacked. And I know firsthand there are staff who maybe have a different opinion and they're attacked. So when we talk about staff, are we just talking about one group of staff, or are we talking about all groups of staff? So because there's a lot of attacking going on in social media, as we know. And so I'm wondering, are we going to make sure that all staff are supported or just staff that supports with decisions made by the board?
Thank you. I'm going to turn to trustee Weston so that she can clarify the intention of what she means by the word staff in the motion.
Yeah, so my intention for the word staff is all staff, and that the reason social media was included, I did think about our communication staff that are looking at some pretty awful messages that are being redirected, but all staff, you know, as trustee Johnson mentioned, things impact them outside work and it can impact their work. So it wasn't to look at a specific social media post, but just in general. So, but my definition of staff is all of our staff. We are an employer of, I don't know what our employee number is right now, but we have a lot of staff.
A bunch.
All staff. Yes,
I just,
all staff.
thank
Thank you.
So just to follow up, I just want to make sure that all opinions are respected. So when staff, we're making sure that we aren't just supporting staff who agree with whether it's a collective decision or individual trustees. We're looking at all staff.
Thank you. Other comments on the questions, comments on the motion in front of us? I'm seeing none. I will call the question. All in favor of the recommendation? I'm voting for it. Okay, opposed? Abstentions? Seeing none, that was unanimous. And I will now turn the chair back over to the chair.
Thank you. Good job, trustee.
Oh, it's been a while.
Things have changed here. Okay, just get the report going here. We're moving stuff around up here, Chuck. Sorry. That's okay. Gotta get my report together here. I know, redecorating my desk. 31. Okay, we are moving on to the discussion about the retirement celebration, and this starts on folio 31. We are extended till 10:30. We are moving to question period. Trustee Watson?
Thank you. I've received complaints from parents who are talking about I don't know if it's program, presentation, whatever it is, and it's called Real Time. I did send an email to staff, but I still haven't received a response. Parents are concerned that they did not get a permission slip. In fact, they had questioned, you know, I guess it was actually being demonstrated during the course, during a different course, but parents weren't told. They were not informed that this presentation was taking place. They were not informed of what the presentation was about, and they were not given permission slips. And so I'd like to know why parents weren't informed. And I know that the presentation, I believe it's happened in a couple of Cambridge schools, because I'm hearing from parents, but I'd like to know why we are not telling parents that this presentation is happening. We're not telling them what the presentation is about, and there aren't any permission slips.
Director Chanaka?
Through you, Chair. Yes.
Sorry, I said real time, right? I didn't say it's called real time. Okay.
Um,
Oh, okay.
Through,
I believe you did.
yeah, through you, Chair. Trustee Watts,
Sorry, it's not
Get
real
Real,
time,
it's called
real talk.
Get
Okay,
Real.
real talk?
Oh, it's what is it?
Get Real.
Get real. Okay.
Get Real?
Real.
So you're asking about Get Real. Thank you. Director Chanaka?
Yeah, Through you, Chair, yes, Trustee Watson, we did get your email at the end of Wednesday. And I know that, Associate Director Miller responded to you, at the end of Wednesday to also let you know that we were going to look into that. That would have been Thursday, Friday, and today's Monday. So we're trying to get some information, and I know that Associate Director let you know that he would get back to you. So I just want to make it clear that it's not that you haven't heard from staff. I would also like to caution against the characterization of us doing things without letting parents know, without us being able to get the information to you so that we can actually let you know what has been going on. At this moment, I don't have the information with me. Like, as Associate Director Miller noted, he will look into it and you should hear back from him by tomorrow.
Thank you. So just to follow up, I'm not mischaracterizing anyone. I am relaying what parents have told me. They didn't know about the presentation and they weren't given permission slips or information. So I am relaying the message that parents have told me. I'm not mischaracterizing anybody. Director Jennifer.
Through you, Chair, I think it would be appropriate if concerns are brought that maybe staff could be asked, can you clarify what has happened, without it being accusatory to staff saying that we are doing something without informing parents.
I'm not
because
anyone.
Trustee Watson?
Because that is the way that it's being presented, and it sets a tone within the community that causes more alarm and more fear. We have committed to finding out. We will get back to you. Associate Director Miller will get back to you. If there are parents who feel that way, then my hope is that through your role and your supportive role for also staff, that you would ask us to just check to see what has actually happened and to give us an opportunity to come back to you and let you know without saying that this is what we're doing.
I specifically said parents are saying they're not being informed, right? So I'm not accusing anyone, and I do want the information and I've been waiting patiently for it.
Trustee Watson, Director Chanaka has clarified the timeline and they are looking into it.
Okay.
And I will remind, we do have some meeting norms about tone and assuming positive intentions and promoting a spirit of curiosity, inquiry, questions.
I want
all of that.
But I didn't feel that towards me. I'm not characterizing anyone. I am relaying the message, which I was elected to do. And so I want that same courtesy.
Treating with respect.
I want
also to treat staff with respect also in questioning.
I want my intentions to be assumed positive as well.
Trustee Meisner?
Through the chair to staff,